Afternoon, everybody. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. May I have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill,
Here.
Vice Chair Clark. Here. Commissioner Aldana. Commissioner Lesnar-Buxton. Commissioner Nielsen. Here. Commissioner Price. Commissioner Ramsey.
Here.
All right. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Chair McGill, no changes to the agenda.
All right. That takes us to written public comment. The only written comments that I saw are related to the agenda items with the trees. Is that correct? Okay, great. Then that takes us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. I don't have any speaker slips. Those of you that are on this for the trees, we'll call you up when that agenda item comes up. Do we have anybody online?
Yes, we do have someone online. For those who wish to speak during public comment, please use the raise your hand functionality in the Zoom control panel. When I call on you, please unmute yourself and then speak for a maximum of 2 minutes.
You'll need to reset the clock to 2 minutes, by the way. It's set at 3 minutes.
Oh, yes. I will reset.
Thanks.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, no hands raised? All right, so that brings us to our Youth Council report. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Parks and Recreation Commission. So, I'm seeing new faces here. My name is Jeremy Solano Beltran. I'm chair of the Santa Barbara Youth Council, and I will be providing the Youth Council update for today. My advisor is not here today, so I'm alone. Okay. Our last update included information on the Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award of the 2025 and the 2025 Youth Speak Out. So we're going to talk about that. The Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award, the Youth Council selected a recipient to review the Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award. We would like to once congratulate Fatima Arias Zarate, the recipient of the 2025 Harriet Miller's Youth Leadership Award, who was honored at the February 19 Downtown Organization Breakfast Awards. Fatima is a senior graduating from San Marcos. She's very involved with her school's associated student body, is the Mecha Club president, is a mission scholar, and works as a Starbucks barista. Her application highlighted her leadership skills and personal experience as a teen in Santa Barbara. She spoke about the challenges most low-income youth are facing in being displaced due to high cost of living and how this affects our community. Fatima has been accepted into Stanford University and will be studying political science and public policy. She's the winner this year. And now we move on to our biggest event of the Youth Council, the 2025 Youth Speak Out. The Youth Council held the 2025 Youth Speak Out on Saturday, March 1st, almost a month ago. This was our most successful Speak Out so far, and we had an overwhelming attendance and participation from teens. And we have roughly 50 attendees, including our panelists, of course. Our panelists included Hillary Allen, environmental scientist of the City of Santa Barbara, Sustainability and Resilience. It also included Michelle Holmes, Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the Crane Country Day School. We also had Suzanne Grimsey, PIO, Chief of Strategy and Community Engagement, Santa Barbara County Department of Behavioral Wellness. And we have Tess Harris, State Street Master Planner, City of Santa Barbara Community Development. So we had a lot of leaders and people who are very involved in the community of Santa Barbara, including, sustainability and the State Street Master Planner, which was very exciting to have her. The Youth Council opened the event by leading powerful roundtable discussions with teen attendees. We focused on sustainability, mental health, inclusion, and State Street, and heard lots of feedback from our attendees. we broke for lunch, and then last part of our event was the panel. We learned a lot, and we are working on putting together a report for you to report our findings. Lastly, during our previous update, we were asked what kind of support the Youth Council could use from the Parks and Recreation Commission, right? One area of support will be for the Youth Council to hear more about the issues the Commission is working on and potentially offer the teen boys some of these matters. We plan on working closely with our advisors to learn more about the Commission, and we always look forward to any updates from you guys. So we always held our meetings, and we're always open to hear about you guys and any concern that may affect us. Parks and Recreation Commission, thank you for your time. Can I answer any questions that the Commission may have?
All right, thank you. Well, I'll start with Commissioner Nielsen.
Thank you for the report. Very well done. I'm going to be a liaison to you. I'm looking forward to joining your next meeting and stopping by at your regular hosted meetings. For this report, I was wondering what you attribute the increased attendance to. You said this was one of your best attended events yet. How'd you guys get the word out to make sure that people were going to come and participate in this wonderful event?
Okay, so for a quick history of the event, this event was held before the pandemic, then it stopped because of the pandemic, and then we started with very few attendees after the pandemic on a Zoom meeting, and it was like roughly 13 or 10 people attending. It was not that big. The next year it was 20, then the next year 30, so we're expecting this increase, not only because of the pandemic, but because everything is normalizing in schools. And so, yeah, it will be a huge part in that, but also because we are adapting new ways of contacting more people, and we have half of our youth council is consisting of many young people. So we have a incredible diverse network, and we also invited a couple of groups from all around the city. For example, we invited Paul, we invited some mission scholars. So yeah, it's about networking, talking to people, and getting those flyers out.
Very well done. Thank you. I look forward to meeting you at your next meeting.
Yeah, we're also excited.
And Vice Chair Clark.
I just wanted to say that it gives me hope seeing that some of the topics you guys covered at your Speak Out included sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and mental wellness, all things that are taking hits at the federal level right now. So it just gives me hope that you guys are taking these issues seriously and not letting them fall aside. So thank you for that. Thank you for representing.
Yeah, responding to that, it is very interesting because also our panelists, this is for our report, but I'm going to include it in here. Our panelists were very hopeful about the many diverse backgrounds and the great amount of people that came to hear about them and hear about what we can do to support. Yeah, and we're very proud that this was a very successful year for us.
Yeah, and it's amazing work you do. And like I always say, I would love to see people just clamoring to be on the youth councils because this is such a great organization. And I think I would just also say, I'm probably going to butcher the last name, but Fatima, is it Sarate you said?
Yeah, so her full name is Fatima Arias Sarate.
Sarate. So
Yes.
I didn't get the Arias. So Fatima
Yeah.
Arias Sarate, I would just like to, on behalf of all of us, extend our congratulations to her for her leadership, for her award. Sounds like it was well-deserved, and I imagine she will do fabulously at Stanford, and we wish her the best of luck.
Thank you. Yeah, any further questions? I would also like to add something that was not added on the paper. We're also making our interviews for the new cycle, for the recruitment cycle of spring, and we're holding our interviews from our part before the city council does. So if you guys have any questions in how that's proceeded or how the Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award is elected, then I will be happy to answer that question too.
Great. All right.
If not,
Thank you very much.
Okay.
See you in a couple months.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to the Commissioner Committee Assignment Reports. I would start to my far left with Commissioner Nielsen, but it sounds like you're starting this coming month.
Yes, I have nothing to report for this month.
Okay. And then Vice Chair Clark.
I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, and we visited all the trees on the agenda that we're going to talk about later.
And Commissioner Ramsey.
Nothing to report.
And Commissioner Price.
It was an off month, so nothing to report.
Okay, and then for me, we did have, well, first of all, I represented the commission on the Milpas tree appeal. That was held a couple of weeks ago, and the appeal was denied. And then we did have a Park Foundation meeting last week, and for the most part, continued our conversation of upcoming events for the band shell, so watch this space. All right, so that then brings us to ceremonial items, employee recognition. Do we have any service awards this month?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, yes. We had 3 members of our Parks Division team recognized by the City Administrator this month. Emiliano Encinas is a grounds maintenance worker 2, so that's entry level, but he was recognized for 5 years of service. And for our new commissioners, once you're at that 5-year mark, that's when that recognition process begins, and then it's done every 5 years. We also had 2 very long-standing Parks Division staff be recognized for 25 years of service. The first one is Steve Williams. He has been in the Forestry Division for that length of time. His title is Grounds Maintenance Worker 2. He is a key member of the forestry team. If you see someone watering street trees in Santa Barbara, more often than not, it is Steve. But he also helps the crews out with various tree trimming operations that they have. So he's super knowledgeable and super valuable to the team. And then Jeff Miller, whose current position is Irrigation Systems Technician. And he was recognized, as I said, for 25 years of service. And he's been a grounds worker, he's been a senior grounds worker, he's been an irrigation systems technician, I believe, for about 10 years. And he has amazing institutional knowledge about our more than, I don't even know how many irrigation systems we have, and many of them are more than 30 years old. So as you can imagine, they take a lot of care. So he was also recognized for his 25 years of service.
All right, well, thank you very much, and congratulations to all of them. I'm sure Mr. Encinas will discover that the 5 years quickly add up, and you get to 25 years before you blink twice. And as we know with Mr. Williams, Mr. Miller, then, you know, those positions are the backbone of what keeps parks going and green and, you know, available for all of us. So congratulations to them, and best wishes. All right, that takes us to summary of council actions. I guess I just had one quick question on that one is, what is happening with the Spencer Adams parking lot with sanctuary centers? That's 10,000 square feet seems like a lot.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, so Sanctuary Centers is upgrading their facility. It's located on Ananapamu Street. They provide services and housing for people of a variety of needs. And because they're a nonprofit and because they are a close partner of the city, plus they also benefit from city funding toward their project, they requested and the City Council authorized temporary use of a portion of the parking lot for staging.
Okay, is that going to be, do you think you foresee much of an issue with parking during this
Chair
time?
McGill and Commissioners, no, we did a thorough parking analysis, and since it's a temporary use and it expires the end of June next year, we felt we could easily accommodate any parking needs.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious about that. Okay, great. And then that takes us to the minutes with the recommendation that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 26th, 2025. I actually did see one thing, and I think we could approve with just a note to make the correction, which is that we did note, it was back on, at the end of the minutes when we were doing the committee appointments. that we just need to change the IPM primary to me from Vice Chair Clark. But with that change, I would move that we approve the minutes.
Motion to approve?
Commissioner Nielsen?
Seconded.
Okay. All right. So that takes us to our trees, and we're going to start with, and welcome, Mr. Volpe. And we're going to start with Las Tunas.
Okay,
How do I advance it? There you go, and then click on that with the mouse. There you go. Chair McGill and Commissioners, just a brief introduction. Brett Volpe is our street tree supervisor, and he is standing in for Nathan Slack. Everybody knows it's spring break week, and so Mr. Slack is on spring break with his family. But Brett has many years of experience maintaining and managing our trees and works very closely with the forestry crews.
Yeah, thanks, and welcome. And before we get kicked off, just so that everybody is aware, I know I will be recusing myself from the Crestline Drive tree discussion
okay.
because I live kind of close. All
Okay.
right.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. Again, I'm Brett Volpe. And we start at 1935 Las Tunas Road, and the tree pictured there is a Canary Island pine. It's probably all of 90 feet. The application stated fire-related concerns, emphasizing the tree's proximity to high voltage. In looking at the tree, the committee met on site, walked underneath the tree on property, and discussed the tree, feeling that the tree was in good health. But was looking at it in terms of structure. The three stems that are grown there, probably from an old topping wound, are at least 30 feet in length, and they're codominant stems, so they're weakly attached, and the committee just focused on that and the proximity to the high voltage line, saying that it was a reasonable concern. And after review, the committee recommended to the commission that they support the removal, stating that the principles of good forest management would be upheld by that decision.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Volpe? So, I mean, I did have one, because I know it was, and it's, I don't think you were here when we had this conversation, so this is going to be maybe a little unfair, but we looked at a tree, I think it was even last month, where we had split codominant leads, and that was considered structurally manageable. Now, it was a different species of tree. It was up just off of Foothill. I can't remember the road, but it was just off Foothill. And I was just wondering what the difference there versus here might be, and I was wondering if it was the proximity to the power, the high voltage power lines that made a difference, or if it was the species that made a difference.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I know that tree that was being referred to as last commission meeting. This one has a longer lever arm, so it's 90 feet, more exposed to weather in that sense, but every other reason that you just stated is also correct. It's a different species, and so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I always like to do consistency checks.
Its proximity
Yeah.
to high voltage is the main concern.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Clark.
And by lever arm, you mean it's more susceptible to bending and high winds and butting up against the power lines? Because I believe that's what we discussed on site. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, it's a lever arm is putting force on the base, yeah, essentially.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions. I do not have any speaker slips for this one. I'm obviously opening up for comment. Do we have anybody online?
Anyone who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand in the Zoom control panel. When I call on you, please unmute yourself and then speak for a maximum of 2 minutes. There are no hands raised.
Okay, great. All right, with that, I will open it up for discussion and/or a motion as appropriate.
I guess I just have one more question.
Okay, okay.
One more question.
Vice Chair Clark.
Sorry, was there a reason we didn't, I'm sure there is, what was the reason we didn't condition a replacement tree? I can't recall.
Chair Miguel and Vice Chair Clark, the reason listed on the application was that the committee did not feel that the neighborhood would be overall affected because there are other pine trees listed at the corner of the property there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Nielsen.
Another follow-up question. Have we seen any lever arm mitigation efforts in past where we can strap, bolt, make sure that you're joining the 3 limbs of that tree higher up? Has that ever been an effective tactic as opposed to complete removal?
Chair Miguel, Commissioner Nielsen. Yes, it's arboriculturally speaking, you can fasten those, but they do require inspection at a time interval that is tough to keep up on. And in this case, SCE is involved and offering the removal. So they usually are not going to get involved in anything like that because of the nature of having to go back and take responsibility for it over and over again, inspection and upkeep and that kind of thing. So, but yes, with codominance, through bolting, cabling, those are arboricultural techniques that can be utilized to preserve trees.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, does anybody have a motion? Yeah, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I am prepared to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to approve the removal of the Canary Island pine at 1935 East La Tunis. I would say not only based on the fact that it's good principles of forest management, but also that the safety of person or persons dictates removal.
I'd like to second.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. If there's no final discussion, we'll go to a vote. And silencing phones, of course, is always, yeah, no, mine does it too sometimes too, and I can't always control it. All right, with that, I'm going to exit. Somebody just come get me when.
Oh, back to you, Mr. Wolpe.
Okay, Vice Chair Clark and Commissioners, the second item here is at 1459 Crestline Drive. It's 2 street trees proposed for removal. They are Ficus microcarpa or Indian laurel fig. It's a tree that we have commonly around town. The application concerns were hardscape disruption, the blocking of light and air to the property, previous sewer lateral conflicts, and concerns about potential damage to the water main that's right next to the tree on the right there. The committee went out on site, looked at the trees, stating that they're healthy, they're well maintained, noting the hardscape disruptions, and discussing the challenges posed by large trees of this species in the spot that they're at, as well as looking at the similar past removal requests for this type of tree having been denied in the past. After review, the committee determined that there were no findings pursuant to the Santa Barbara Municipal Code that they could uphold the removals, and so recommended to the commission that they deny the removals as proposed at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Volpe at this time?
Yep. Thank you for stepping in for Nathan, by the way. On this form, there's no place for proposed replacement tree. Is that correct, that there is no plan on replacing these if they were cut down?
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Ramsey, these are street trees, so if the commission approves their removal, the applicant will be responsible for moving the trees, and the commission can certainly condition the removal on planting of replacement trees.
Thank you. The form is just a little different than the other ones. I didn't see the note all the way at the bottom, so thank you.
Any other questions?
More of a general process question. If this were to be denied as recommended, the Public Works Department, how have they typically engaged around topics like this where the hardscape, the sidewalk, does need attention, and the first request seems to come to us to remove the cause of it, but the symptom persists? What does staff have to comment about how that would get handled going forward?
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Nielsen, Public Works is responsible and does respond to these in an order of priority. So we looked into this a little bit more, and there is a update to hardscape up there, curb and gutter sidewalk replacement that's out for bid currently. So we deal with these all the time. It's just a part of the system, and you're right. The tree comes up first, but really we fix the hardscape and look at what tree roots need to be cut at the time of exposure.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Once a sewer lateral has been repaired, it's at a lesser risk of being damaged again by roots, correct? It was my understanding that roots can damage a line that needs repair, but they don't really attack a new, healthy, well-maintained line. Is that correct?
Vice Chair Clark, that is my understanding as well, is sewer laterals that are leaking, trees go after that. But, and largely that's because infrastructure under the ground isn't updated or is beyond its timeline. So once the sleeve is put in that existing line that's leaking, the tree has no water to obtain that was leaking at that point, so.
Are there any more questions before we go on to?
Again, thank you very much for stepping in for Nathan. I did have a question about the tree boxes. It looks like they are very full. In your estimation, has it overgrown the tree box? And then secondarily, you mentioned that the curb is out for bid. Are you aware if that has been taken into consideration? So if then.
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Price, would you repeat the last part of your
Absolutely.
comment there?
So if the tree has outgrown its tree box, the planter box is expanding it, changing its shape within the scope of the contract that is currently out to bid.
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Price, yes. We work with Public Works all the time on opening up Parkway so that we can plant more trees or that tree root zones have more area to open up. You know, challenged by sidewalk, challenged by curb and gutter, let's open them up laterally. So we look at that as a part of each project that Public Works is involved in.
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioner Price, just to continue on that, technically speaking, we want to avoid that there be any hardscape within a parkway. Sometimes that happens for various reasons, so we do, whenever feasible, remove hardscape in order to allow a tree to have more grow space. It doesn't mean there isn't going to be a future when a sidewalk might be impacted and we still have to go back and repair that sidewalk. It's just it's what happens when you have trees and parkways, and some trees have more impact, some have fewer impacts.
It looks like we have a speaker to this item, Mr. Farrell.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Farrell, and I'm here to request approval of our application to remove these two very large Indian laurel trees from the parkway in front of our home. While I appreciate all the hard work that the Street Tree Committee has done, I must respectfully disagree with their conclusion that there is manageable hardscape damage in this situation, and that the denial of our request should be based on a need for consistency. I believe there are multiple grounds for approving the removal request, primarily because we have a situation that falls squarely within the parameters of Municipal Code Section 15.24.090. Subsection C allows for removal of the tree if the character of the immediate neighborhood will not be negatively affected by the proposed removal. When I made this request for removal, I included in our materials a petition signed by 14 of my neighbors agreeing with my request to remove these trees. They do not like these trees. They've had trouble with these trees in the past. Most importantly, subsection C of that municipal code section allows for removal when regard for safety of persons or property dictate removal. The sidewalk around these trees has been repaired multiple times. In fact, it was repaired last year, and despite those repairs, the hardscape has risen to 3.5 inches in this last year. The trees are a trip and fall hazard in our neighborhood, which consists of a lot of elderly people who take daily walks by these trees every day. I have witnessed personally 2 falls in front of my house because of these trees. We are offering to absorb the cost of the removal. We have agreed to replace these trees with 2 trees that are recommended by the city. It would seem to me that our ability to absolve the city of additional costs and future liability should be taken into consideration here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any more speakers? Do you see anybody online?
Anyone wanting to speak on this item, please raise your hand. No hands raised.
Do we have discussion or more questions for either the applicant or Mr. Volpe at this time? I do have a question, Mr. Volpe. Can you repeat what the timeline would be for hardscape repair again, and how frequently Public Works could go out and address the issue?
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioners, I checked in with Public Works, and there is a project out to bid currently for whether that property is included. I do not know, and the times that they revisit, it's based on request and priority and necessity, which is assessed by their inspectors.
Okay.
So I can't say how often it would be revisited.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we do have some newer commissioners here. I would just like to say a few things. Of course, we take people's safety very, very seriously. And I am wondering, there's a lot of people that signed this petition, but I don't see any of them here that are willing to come up and talk about their experience with the trees.
2 of them sent emails, I think, to the city
Okay.
council and not Parks and Rec.
Okay. Traditionally, we haven't removed trees for hardscape damage, because that is repairable. Removing two massive carbon sequestering trees from our neighborhoods, traditionally, we have foregone that for the sake of hardscape. And in today's context of climate change, we really need to take every tree seriously, like we take every human life seriously. So it's a hard question for us that we've got to look at right now. Like, are we worried about people falling? But we have to acknowledge that the hardscape will get repaired. You know, if those two giant trees come out and we replace them with smaller trees, like, how are we going to offset that carbon increase? It's like every single tree matters to our urban forests. So it's a tough one. The sewer line, the lateral, I think we cannot be so concerned about because it's been repaired. It's not really at high risk right now. And the blocking of the light and air, trees are actually producing oxygen, and blocking of the light, I think, with our hot summers might actually be a good thing. Anybody else?
I did visit this location and do concur that the sidewalk is in kind of desperate need of repair and that there are tripping hazards there if it's not addressed. I think I did see that there's some orange markings on the ground to alert pedestrians to those tripping hazards. That's kind of an administrative control. It doesn't actually solve that problem. The sidewalk is not ground down. There are sticking up lips that could catch someone's toe. I think that those concerns are valid. It does feel to me that there are other solutions that fall within the Public Works Department to address this issue and look for alternate solutions instead of jumping right to the tree removal, and how they route and reconcrete that area and what the scope and details of the contract out to bid are to make sure we've learned from the last couple times this apparently has been done to try to do it in a better, different way, to somewhat respect that the fact that these are large mature trees and they're planted in that small area, that we might need to not apply the same sidewalk approach as before, but those safety concerns are valid and seem not completely addressed at the moment for that area.
After hearing all of this, I am inclined to recommend to the committee that we deny without prejudice, which means they would be able to resubmit the application. For two reasons. First of all, I'd like to see specifically what the replacement plan would be. Smaller native species, non-invasive. I'd like something a lot more concrete that would suggest to offset the biomass. And then secondly, I would like to know if the contract that is currently out to bid does in fact cover the hardscape, because the trip and fall hazard is a very real concern.
Vice Chair Clark, Commissioner Price, are you suggesting that the commission defer action on this item pending more information about repairs to the sidewalk? Because it sounds like you want the application to come back, but it has to be an action of the commission to choose to delay, to defer action.
I believe that's my opinion. I think that's an effective course, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission.
Ms. Zachary, is there a difference between denying without prejudice and deferring an action? It's essentially the same thing, correct?
Vice Chair Clark, it certainly, I guess I would suggest, and I think the department has demonstrated, and clearly there is a key issue that needs to be addressed in this location if the trees are not approved for removal, that extra steps are taken to address the sidewalk lift and perhaps provide more grow space and confirm that in fact, it was my understanding that the Streets Division would be addressing this. If there is orange marking, I would assume it came from the Public Works Department, but I can't say that for sure because I don't know that, so don't take it as my word. But we can certainly verify that, and if it is not for some reason, can certainly make sure that it is added, particularly since it has come forward from the adjoining resident as a key issue, and they've taken all this effort to address the situation in front of their house.
Okay.
After hearing that, I think my recommendation would be the deny without prejudice, because I would like to see the specific trees and biomass offset included in the application. But I would also like to see more information from the city about the proposed bid. So I'd like to motion to deny without prejudice. Or is that?
I can second that for the sake of discussion. So are you saying that if the applicants came back with an acceptable tree replacement, then you'd be inclined to approve the removal of these trees? Because I'm not quite sure in your mind, is it the lack of a replacement or a plan that is making you indecisive?
Sure, I think that if there's no concrete plan for the life safety element, and there is an acceptable biomass offset, I would be inclined to consider it. But right now, I don't have either of those two factors to consider right now.
Vice
Okay.
Chair Clark, Commissioner Price, their application, the cover sheet that staff prepared upon receiving this application does indicate what the designated street trees are for Crestline, and it would be the city's decision as to which of those trees would be planted in this location. So we have 2 different species of eucalyptus, an oak, and I don't know, what's this one? Brisbane box. So it's not to the applicant to make a suggestion regarding the street tree that's planted. It's based on the street tree designation, which the commission may change as you've experienced in prior meetings, but for now, these are the street trees that are designated for Crestline.
If that's been settled, then I'd like to motion to defer until we have more information on the bid.
Well, we had a first motion and a second, so we have to vote to eliminate that one. So we can
All right.
vote on that one, then we can move on to another motion. So,
Okay.
We'll vote on the first motion that he made.
Which would be the motion to deny without prejudice.
Because I seconded it, we have to address it and then, okay. I'm going to make another motion now, and you can vote as you please, but I'm going to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and deny the removals at 1459 Crestline.
Second.
Any discussion? No, I should have asked that before we voted, sorry. I'm out of practice. I would to read the language, if I can find it, stating that all decisions of this commission are appealable to City Council within 10 days of this meeting. And that I trust, Mr. Volpe, you'll follow with Public Works and the applicant to make sure his safety concerns and hardscape are continue to be addressed until they're fixed.
Vice Chair Clark, we can, yes, and will.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, after you contact Public Works, could you please keep the commission in the loop so we know that the applicant's concerns are being addressed? Or give us a number to call. I'd be happy to advocate.
Vice Chair Clark and Commissioners, yes, we will provide the commission with follow-up information.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure you didn't.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Roble.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item on our agenda is located at 953 Roble Lane. It's a Quercus agrifolia, requested for removal. It's a setback tree adjacent to a carport in between the home. Application states concerns for maintaining homeowners insurance, concern for the tree growing into a nearby electrical conduit, and decay in the tree. The committee met on site saying that the tree was reasonably maintained and looked healthy. They took a good look at the buttress where the trunk goes into the ground, checking to see that it had vigor, commenting that it did, and also really looking at that trunk decay, which they did find is present. So after considerable discussion, the committee recommended to the commission that it deny without prejudice, giving the applicant an opportunity to come back at a later date if they were unable to obtain homeowners insurance because of the tree's overhang.
All right. Thank you very much. I will open it up for questions. I'll start with one. Had the Street Tree Committee seen this arborist report that we got just the other day? Okay, that answers that
Chair
question.
McGill, no.
Because that's actually one, that seems like a fairly serious report, I guess. Have you had a chance to review it, and do you have any comments on it?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I have had a chance to review it. Mr. Knight's Level 3 risk assessment is thorough. It speaks to the decay found in trees. It was also commented by the arborists that were on site who have a long history of work in Santa Barbara. And just that knowledge that's included in the summary about a pipe being strong even though it's hollow in the middle. But and he again goes into resistograph, and he's looked at it from many different angles. So it's a thorough report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other? Go ahead, please.
Mr. Volpe, do you believe the staff would have made a different decision had they had this risk assessment in their hands at the time of the visit?
Chair McGill, Vice Chair Clark,
Okay.
I don't think we can
Okay.
opine
Speculation.
on
I
what the Street Tree
apologize.
Advisory
Yeah.
Committee would have done. However, you're correct. Additional information was received after the application was submitted, and the Street Tree Advisory Committee considered this tree.
Is anybody else going to jump in? All right, then I have I mean, obviously, the tree is right up against the carport, and it is, and there were signs of damage to the slab. That's did not strike me as unusually, I mean, the diameter of that trunk is not big relative to how big these trees can get. How much bigger is this tree going to get if it's allowed to stand?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, that tree it's in that location at its age is probably not going to get a lot bigger, but things do expand to some degree, so probably will. If vigor continues, it would expand a little bit every year, but ultimately that tree is probably about as large as it's ever going to get.
Okay, thank you.
Is my professional opinion.
Okay, thanks. And then I do have a question that might be better off for the applicant, actually. Are there any other questions before I open it up for comment? Okay, then we do have one speaker, and that is Anthony Luna. When you get up here, you will have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Commission, to allow me to speak. I'm Anthony Luna, owner, 953 Robley Lane. After the initial decision by the advisory committee, I thought it prudent to have a level 3 assessment done by a certified board arborist, Kenneth Knight. And he came out to assess the structural condition. I'm reading verbatim of the condition, mold, damage, and decay. He also brought up some research back in 2015 about structural failure of the same type of trees due to decay and being most reported associated with tree failure. So the background on this tree, he found that the leaf density is below normal for this species of tree. At the base of the tree on the south side of the unsealed cavity, a wound in the wood approximately 1 foot tall. And also that was the major condition of concern for this risk assessment. And there was a second cavity also on the side of the tree that was part of the risk assessment as well. So in his tests, he selected an area 4 feet from the base and found that the wood is hollow. Another test indicated he initially expected internal wood density in the tree for the first 4 feet of the tree very low, indicating hollowness. His conclusion is, in his professional opinion, the risk of the tree trunk failing within 1 year is moderate. There are no reasonable mitigations for the risk of the failure that would reduce the risk to a lower level risk. And finally, his recommendation is while the tree his final recommendation is to remove the 24-foot oak, mitigate its removal by replacement of another oak tree, which I've already replaced and planted a tree. So it's true that I did get denied insurance because of this issue, because of the canopy over the structure. This is a trend within the insurance industry. You'll find.
I'm going to have to, your 2 minutes is up.
Okay.
But I do have a question about that,
Yes.
so hang tight. Okay. So I just want to know, so have you been non-renewed for your insurance this year? And if so, was the tree stated as the cause?
Yes, I have found new insurance.
Okay.
I was denied, and then I did find new insurance, but I'm worried about the next time that's going to
Okay,
happen.
so-
And the damage, I brought some photos that I wanted to submit
Okay.
that damaged the roots because of his.
Okay, thank you very, and then your insurance, your renewed insurance is with an admitted insurer, not the state?
It's not the state, no.
Okay.
But may I submit these photos for review?
Yeah, sorry, yes, we'll take,
Because
okay,
you
thank
did
you.
say that the root, you were discussing the trees.
Yeah,
still growing,
that's,
but
thank
the
you,
root
thank you.
damage is-
Thank you. I need to turn it back to the commission now. And then I have a question, I do have a specific question from the testify and from the arborist report. Sorry about that. So one of the things we have not actually really talked about much in my time on the commission is live crown ratios. Can you perhaps talk a little bit about what the importance of the live crown ratio is and what the ratio of 45%, what the implications of that are?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, live crown ratio is just in viewing the tree as the whole tree is 100%. If the crown if there's 40% live crown ratio, that means that 40% of that tree is providing food factories leaves. And it's pretty simple. So if you have a 90-foot tree and it has 10% live crown ratio, you have a tree that is 90 feet with 10 feet of, you know, yeah.
And is 45% good, bad, indifferent?
In this case, because of the structure of the tree and the nature of the maintenance that's take place, which looks like it's been kindly top for view or kept suppressed, I think 40% is reasonable. And the photos that Mr. Knight provides are of a tree actually leafing out abundantly. So that's really young leaf, and it will have a quite full canopy. If the colored pictures are kind of astounding.
Okay, thank you. And I had another question, it's just completely gone away. I'm sure it'll come back. Oh, yes. So I'm thinking back to risk assessments that we've looked at and what risk levels warrant removal. And it seems like fairly recently we had a conversation about whether or not you would, under normal circumstances, remove a tree with a moderate risk of failure. And my memory is that under normal circumstances, the choice would be to not remove the tree. Is that correct? And with these, what circumstances would change that if that is correct? I'm going back a couple of, a few months now, I think.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, a risk rating is accepted levels of risk. And so Mr. Knight is saying that there's a moderate level of risk in keeping the tree, and he gives a time frame, which is 1 year. So he's talking about basically structures, limb loss, trunk failure, or whole tree failure. So accepted levels of risk, I think, in every person, agency, commission, in this sense, has to decide what that threshold is.
Okay. It's a choose not to answer. Yeah, okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I mean, I'll have to admit, I'm kind of torn on this one. I find it, my memory is that certainly in a moderate risk in an open area, you would not be choosing to remove the tree. I firmly believe that based on previous conversations. Roble Lane is not an open area. It's a pretty tight piece of real estate. I find myself really torn. I think it is a healthy canopy and a relatively healthy tree, but I also see the cracks in the pavement, and yes, the pipe is stronger than the center, but this hole in the tree is right smack up against a structure. I'm less concerned about the insurance, though I'm intimately aware of the problems of non-renewal. Yeah, I mean, I'll just leave it at that. I'm kind of torn. And Commissioner Nielsen.
Question for staff. Is there any evidence that you guys have seen, refer to, that roots underneath concrete and hardscape and being up against a structure poses increased risk or decreased risk to this tree falling over time? Does it help the tree to be kind of sandwiched under things or pinned down? Does it hurt it? Is there anything that's objective that the commission should refer to?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Nielsen, hardscape is essentially a good thing in our view of it, because the tree has already accepted its position, it's growing beneath it, so it's to do any site adjustment at that point is detrimental to the tree's health. So when we see you know, our perspective is when we see hardscape damage, we know that the tree's healthy and the roots are moving beneath the surface. At the same time, that can cause repair, which can be further deleterious to the tree's health. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Vice Chair Clark.
Could you tell us what factors transition a tree's risk level from moderate to high risk, and how quickly that would progress in the worst-case scenario?
Chair McGill, Vice Chair Clark, it's species profile and known problems, and Mr. Knight talks about those problems. He looks at a wound on one of the branches, and he's looking at targets, and so the target doesn't move because it's a structure. So the carport or the house is really only in play if the whole tree fails or it fails at that trunk. So that's your area of concern, is the hollow trunk is probably your most likely place of failure, and the target, the house, doesn't move. So moderate level of risk is that the problem area, the trunk, is, and he identifies this over and over again, is if the tree fails at the most likely problem area, it's going toward either the house or going to fall on the carport. So he considers that a moderate risk.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we have anybody prepared to make a motion? Commissioner Nielsen.
Yeah, happy to give a final comment and then make a motion
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I think that this is typical of what we've been seeing in recent applications here, that there's, not without concern or cause to the surrounding property and hardscape, and, typical of our community living adjacent to forest and having a robust, healthy urban forest, to have a lot of trees right up close to next to our homes, which can be a great thing. I'm a little sensitive to this one because I had a similar tree with a hollow trunk that did fall over, and have some personal experience with that one. With that said, I think I'm prepared to make a motion that we agree with the Street Advisory Committee to deny this request without prejudice, to allow, in case for whatever reasons, the conditions to worsen, the tree to take a turn for the worse, to the applicant to reapply with no fee to them.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'd like to second.
All right, motion second. Before we go to a vote, I'm just going to, because of the without prejudice element of it, if the most likely failure mechanism was just become closer to a reality, how much advance notice would there be? And I know that's a totally outrageous question, okay? But do you start to see things shifting? Do you start to, do you,
Chair McGill, Commissioners, I think you will find that anyone in our forestry team or probably on our Street Tree Advisory Committee could point at a tree and say, I had no idea
Yeah.
it would fall. And then there'll be trees that we have no idea why they didn't fall. So it's really hard for us to put us in a position to even respond to that.
fair
Sorry.
enough, fair enough. All right, we have a motion and we do have a second, so.
I have just a short bit of discussion. I'll try not to be long.
Okay.
I feel like the last month or two, we've been using a lot more denying without prejudice. In the past, I feel like we were using it when we needed more evidence. Like, there was not a landscape plan, or there wasn't a proposed species. Like, we were giving the applicant time to come back with that little missing piece of evidence. And this seems like what we're lacking is the ability to foreshadow the future. And I'm not sure that can come up and be presented to us, because no one's going to become clairvoyant. So I just wanted to say that, like, moving forward, that we really maybe have a conversation or about denying without prejudice and what that fully entails.
I'm going to make a kind of a follow-up, and then I'll turn it to you for sure. Yeah, and I think it just comes back down to that really needing to get together and get the workshop together that we've been talking about on trees and the evolving world. I think that's just kind of becoming really important and urgent, because the deny without prejudice now is we're using it more in ways that I didn't envision a few years ago to deal with a very rapidly changing world in terms of trees in privately owned urban environments.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, if I could just add a little information, since we do have 3 new commissioners. In the past, often that's associated with an unknown condition that might be present with the tree when a hardscape repair is made or when an applicant is making a property improvement and it's uncertain whether the tree would be able to survive that change. And at that time, it falls to the city staff, who are experts in tree care and tree decision-making, and the municipal code gives the department the authority to make those decisions because it's a concern that the tree will not survive whatever that change may be. And/or, as Commissioner Clark mentioned, an applicant can come back with more information or provide to staff additional information, and ultimately, under the code, there's an authority to approve a tree removal. In this case, the commission's already made a motion in a second, so I won't interfere, but the commission can also send something back to the Street Tree Advisory Committee if information has been received after they've considered a tree removal. If the commission does not feel confident that the Street Tree Advisory Committee had enough information to consider the application.
So if I interpret that correctly, really what you're saying is that we could send this back to the Street Tree Committee with the additional information of the arborist report?
Chair
If we felt.
McGill, you could. However, you do have a motion and a second, so you need
But
to
we'd
take
have to,
action on that.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, Commissioner Price was first.
And I know that we have a motion on the table, so I'll make this quick. And as Commissioner Clark mentioned, I would like to get a little bit more guidance from the city, maybe the city council, on this recurring issue of fire insurance. When is it appropriate to send it back or deny without prejudice in order, just in case fire insurance is denied? I think that's something that is rapidly meeting its moment, and we have not thankfully encountered an issue where that's been a problem, but I'd like to nip that in the bud if at all possible.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Price, I don't know that the city council will be able to provide what you're seeking. However, I can tell you that we have asked the fire department to provide a presentation on the community wildfire protection plan and the different areas of Santa Barbara that are considered high fire hazards and the evolving nature of concern over fire and hazards and the extent to which trees may contribute or don't contribute to an increasing fire risk.
And Commissioner Nelson.
Director Zachary, just for clarification, with the without prejudice clause on a motion, if the hardscape is going to be touched and managed and you guys, staff, observe something the time you're saying the without prejudice allows you to make a determination on the spot as to whether the tree should come out? Or in any scenario, does it just have to come back from the applicant with no fee?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Nielsen, there's no one single answer for any condition, but there are times when we know that something's moving forward and we're on site and we're making a decision, and that could also affect a city project where we face a condition where a tree cannot be saved in the course of a city project being implemented or a private development project. Again, it varies tremendously, so I can't give you a single answer to that.
All right, Vice Chair Clark, and then we need to make a
Yeah,
decision.
my last little bit is that I just want to say before we vote that I'm very interested in learning more about this risk assessment in this tree. And I think it would best be served to send it back to STAC to look at this risk assessment and revisit the tree. So I just wanted to say that before we vote.
All right, so from a procedural point of view, Robert's rules of whoever's the rules are a little weak on this one. If we were to change our minds and ask to have this sent back with the additional information. Can we do that by asking if our motion makers are care to withdraw their motion and then take it as a separate motion? I thought so, but I just need to clarify that. So in which case, I need to start with you. Do you want to go ahead, or would you like to withdraw your motion?
I'd like to let the motion stand.
You would like to let the motion stand? Do you withdraw your second?
I would like to withdraw my second.
All right, so we have a motion and no second. Now what do we do? We can't do that, okay. I think we have to take a vote. So we have a motion on the table that has.
Second,
That is seconded.
yes.
That is not being withdrawn, to deny without prejudice the removal of the Coast Live Oak at 953 Roble Lane. Okay. And the motion stands. And have you read the appeal language already?
I did, but I couldn't find it, so I paraphrased it. Maybe you'd
Okay,
like to read
I'm going to go ahead and read the appeal language. It says that any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Chapter 1520, tree planting or maintenance, et cetera, may be appealed to the City Council within 10 days pursuant to provisions of Section 13050. It means you have the right of appeal to City Council. You need to do it within 10 days. As you've seen, this is also a deny without prejudice, which means you can come back, and I would suggest that you work with the Forestry Department to really understand what that means as you make your decisions. All right, thank you. And that takes us to East Valerio Street.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item on your agenda is 409 East Valerio Street. There are 4 liquid amber trees inside the front yard setback that are being requested for removal. Reasons on the application were previous issues with the private sewer lateral grade changes because of root development, concerns with the roots damaging the foundation of the home, debris, and the damage to the private fence and public sidewalk. The committee met on site and walked inside the front yard, commenting that the trees were healthy and relatively well maintained, noting the grade changes from the root areas of the tree, and that a lot of the repairs were going on as we were there. After discussion, the committee made a vote 4-1 that the commission uphold the denial of the removals, finding no findings pursuant to the Santa Barbara Municipal Code to uphold the removals.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Volpe? Okay, we're going to start with, I don't know which one of you went first. I'm going to, well,
Nielsen, please.
okay.
I'm getting the priority today, thank you. Would you mind just commenting, if you're able to, on the applicant's statement that says, not sure if their intent to improve the landscape, their definition of improve, is considered a redevelopment, and whether that's, able to be considered, or the fact that they're mature, standing, existing trees is the predominant factor here?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Nielsen, the committee discussed that for quite a bit of time, saying that I don't think they felt that is a redevelopment of property, in the sense that it's not going before any planning board or any type of thing like that, and that there was still plenty of space to plant and landscape as a person would. So that was discussed and considered.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Price?
Yeah, I would like to know if there's any justification given for the lone dissent. You said it was 4-1?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Price, the one dissent was, I think, with the mindset that felt like shouldn't go along unanimous in the sense that private property should be allowed to develop itself a little bit. And even some discussion took place about possibly allowing one, possibly two of those trees, but no motion was ever made by the committee.
Since while we're in the yard and were able to observe, I was unclear from the documentation what foundations were or were not cracked. Was it, I mean, some readings made it look like it was the house, some perimeter walls, and I see, distinct difference between those two. And I'll start with that.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I'm not sure I can speak to what wall it was, but the tree closest to the home, which is also the biggest, or in terms of diameter at breast height, at least in my memory, it would be approximately 15 feet from the edge of the trunk to the actual wall of the house. So I would more than likely assume it was that tree. And the committee, again, felt like those roots at that level could be mitigated. Does that
Okay.
answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess sort of. I mean, it was kind of like where is actual damage? Where was actual damage observed, I think is really my question. And then I guess, and then this is probably more for the applicant, it's my understanding from looking at the documentation is that it's a cast iron sewer lateral.
Yes.
So something's going to get an old cast iron sewer lateral. Again, terracotta and cast iron doesn't last forever.
Right.
Sadly. All right, any other questions? Okay, again, I may have some questions, some of which comes from recently received documentation. I guess I'm going to turn it over to public comment then. And I have one speaker slip, and that is Jesse Hirsch. Welcome. Come on, and I think you probably figured out the drill by now.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll find out. Okay, so is the clock going here? Liquid amber tree from the southeast, 40 to 60 inches of rain per year grows along the banks of the Mississippi. From what I understand, you probably all recognize this fruit. As a kid, I went over the front of my skateboard many times because of this. I also climbed the trees super, up to the very top. And so I have a hate-hate relationship with these guys. Just getting right to it, we get, I think, average 17 inches of rain a year. I think it's much less recently. These trees, in contrast to what the Street Tree Advisory Committee said, the tree on the far right has a codominant leader. You wouldn't have seen this when you went out there because it's a deciduous tree. But I just noticed this week that limb on the right-hand side, which is the east side, has a bunch of dieback. I have a picture of a bunch of active fungus growth on my phone I could submit. So that one has a codominant leader. That is the least vigorous of the trees, which I think is because it's not above the sewer line, which we had cleaned out, and Drain Masters said that it's going to be a reoccurring thing. I've heard in previous discussion that maybe that's not the case, but so we'll find out. Regarding the foundation, that was correct. It's the south-facing corner that is affected. That's the lowest spot on the property. The root crown of the trees has put the grade above the lowest point of the crawl space. So during last spring's rain, that all flooded. The easiest way to mitigate it is to, or the biggest solution is to get the water as far from the foundation as possible. I can submit evidence saying that that's going to happen. And lastly, I think these are a huge hazard. I lost this eye in a surfing accident 18 months ago. This is a fake eye. They did a really good job, but it's a tripping hazard for me. And I think for the neighborhood, we also have mold issues in the house from water, from having trouble mitigating drainage.
And I think I need you to get to wrap up.
Got it. Last
Okay,
thing
thanks.
is just we offered to plant 12 trees that require less water and I
Okay.
believe are more site appropriate. And also there's a carbon
Okay,
cost
okay.
to cutting.
Great,
huge
thank you very
trees.
much.
Thank you.
All right. So, Vice Chair Clark.
I'm gonna ask him a question, do you mind? You said your quote was, the foundation is affected. Can you describe the damage that you've seen?
Yes, so I haven't crawled under there, but we just had a builder come out and, is it Paul? We had a foundation expert come out and say that there's damage, and I could submit that at a later time if that's possible. But there's signs of water damage. The previous owner put in sump pumps under there to mitigate that, and we're gonna put fans under there to try to mitigate it, but I would argue that these trees are gonna need more and more water as they continue to grow. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Nielsen.
Oh, the tree roots, I don't have a great picture of this, but you can see them just making a beeline for the house, which is trapping water
Okay.
underneath it.
Thank you.
Follow-up question for the owner, if you just hang tight with us, one more.
Oh,
So,
come on back.
have you explored a French drain, a channel drain, anything on the exterior of your building to mitigate that water before it enters your foundation and your crawl space?
Yes, we had a hydrologist come out, Adam Simmons, and he basically described this spot of East Valerio as a hole, just upstream on Shasta Lane. There's a big culvert that goes underground. If that gets backed up, it floods. So essentially, the tree's crown, where it is, it's directing some of the water back towards the house. So where the easiest egress for the water is now much closer to the house, like 8 feet or somewhere around there, which is causing, that's going to concentrate more water by the foundation, which in the long run is not great for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Now, Mr. Volpe, I have a question for you, which you're probably going to give me not another question that's inappropriate, but given the drainage work whether the trees stay or go, there's going to need to be drainage work done now because of just based on that testimony, that I would guess. If the work was done to divert the water, can that be done without significantly damaging the trees? So in other words, if the decision is to keep the trees and there's a significant work done to change the drainage patterns, is that going to structurally damage the trees?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we deal with this all the time. And again, site disruptions they do affect tree health. And one kind of rule of thumb is the closer to the center of the tree or where the buttress roots come down, the worse the disruption. And one factor in this to consider is that the trees are 12 to 15 feet away from the actual structure of the home. So that bodes well for the trees having some disruption out there, just in my professional knowledge of what we deal with out in the public.
Yeah, okay.
Chair McGill, if I may, I just wanted to point out that a new attendee has entered the Zoom, and I
Okay.
wanted to ask if they wanted to.
Thank you. I keep forgetting to do that today. Thank you.
So I'll just, anyone wanting to speak on this item for C2, please raise your hand in the Zoom control panel. Okay.
Okay.
No hands
Right, no,
raised.
thank you very much. Okay. And then, so, I mean, part of it, some of the mold issues, that feels like it's lacking documentation for me, and some of the foundation issues feel like they're lacking documentation for me. The pipe itself, oh, I wish I didn't know this stuff as well as I do, for the reason that I know it. I think when you're dealing with cast iron and terracotta, Drainmasters is right. There is really only one solution, regardless of the trees. Those, they just don't last forever. They have a finite lifespan, so I mean, I personally wouldn't take that as a reason to remove trees, because it is just moving the wreck down the road, quite honestly. With that, so I'm going to, Commissioner Nielsen, and then I think if it might be a time to start talking about a motion. Commissioner Nielsen.
Thank you, Chair McGill. A question for staff. Would you mind commenting on the proposed replanting plan in terms of its biomass and its canopy and how that compares to the existing 4 trees that are there?
I have a quick add-on. Can you comment to the water usage for those fruit trees as well compared to what the sweet gum would be?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Nielsen and Commissioner Ramsey. Those don't look like large canopy trees to me, just in taking a look. Some of them may already be existing, I don't know. But losing 4 trees of that size with their carbon storage, environmental impact, habitat, that kind of thing, I don't think it can be replaced by the landscape plan that I see there. Although those are valuable fruit trees, they are very small in nature. And one thing we tell ourselves in trying to establish trees is it takes a lot of water to establish a tree. It takes about 5 years to really get it to take. You know, the mature existing tree, you don't water it. It's doing its own thing. It's feeding at a deeper level. So whether that's helpful or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the street trees in front of our house are both liquid ambers, so familiar with them too. All right, is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I'll prepare to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Committee to deny the removal of the American sweet gums at 409 East Valerio Street.
Are you doing it with or without prejudice?
With prejudice.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Vice Chair Clark?
My only small brief comment is where I feel for the applicant and the work that's going to, French drains, et cetera, and more work entails. I don't see any findings for removal. That's why.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready, yeah. Okay, and the motion passes. And I will not read the appeal language again unless you want me to.
I got it.
Okay, thanks. All right, thank you very much. That moves us on to Argonne Circle.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for us is located at 325 Argonne Circle. It's a cluster of 3 Washingtonia robusta, or Mexican fan palms, pictured there. The property is requesting the removals for concern about pedestrians or churchgoers standing there and having palm fronds fall down at them. And it seemed on the application they listed a recent deodar cedar that failed on the front of the church property, which caused them some alarms. So the STAC committee met on site, looked at the trees, discussed it for a little time. One member recused themselves just because of their relationship to the church, and then made a vote unanimous to recommend to the committee that you deny the removals of the 4 or 3 fan palms with no finding
Okay, thank you.
to support the removals.
Does anybody have any questions? Nope. All right, I do not have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody online?
Anyone wanting to speak on this item, please raise their hand. No hands raised.
Okay. So I guess I would note, we've noted it many times, but I'll note that debris is not normally considered a rationale for tree removal. And then I also note that fan palms don't tend to fall down very easily. Is that a correct statement?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, that is very true. Yes.
Okay. With that, I will go ahead and make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Committee to deny the removal of the 3 Mexican fan palms at Argonne Circle.
Seconding.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. If there is no further discussion, we will go ahead and vote. All righty, it passes, and that takes us to our last one, which is Skyline Circle.
Okay, our final item on the tree agenda is 92 Skyline Circle. It is a Pinus radiata, or a Monterey pine. The application concerns stated an unbalanced canopy lean toward the home, and a concern that it would fall in periods of intense weather. The Street Tree Advisory Committee met on site, walked inside the property. The hill slopes down right there on the property, walked around the trunk, looked at the tree, looked at the canopy underneath the tree, felt like it was actually pretty well balanced despite being utility pruned. Discussed the concerns raised by the applicant and felt like the tree was healthy and the canopy was well balanced at this time. And so recommended to the commission to deny the removal as requested.
All right, does anybody have any questions? I believe we have one about to oh, well, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question would be, if the homeowner does feel that the tree is unbalanced, in your opinion as an arborist, would balancing the tree have detrimental impacts to it? Would it kill the tree, basically?
Wouldn't be much left.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Price, with pine trees, they don't sprout from heading cuts, which means if you cut back to the place where there's no more green, that's it for that branch. So pines are very sensitive. Certain pines are very sensitive. And so the owner would be well within their right to prune the tree within best management practices, which is 25% live foliage. And usually certified arborists and tree companies in town are gonna warn you about certain types of pruning styles. So, does that answer your question?
Halfway, because they do feel it is balanced, do you feel like that would exceed the 25% cutback, or would more drastic measures need to be taken?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Price, I think it was the view of the committee that no pruning was really necessary. Yeah, at that time, but you could apply, again, the 25% rule at any time as a setback tree owner.
Thank you.
And I'll jump, this is on a different tack, but of one you've heard before. I noticed that the stack recommended deny without prejudice in case of non-renewal of insurance. Was that the applicant has not been non-renewed, to the best of your knowledge, have they?
Chair
Oh, no,
McGill.
actually, no, never mind. I realized I was looking at the wrong one. Yeah, sorry. Withdrawn. All right. With that, I'm going to go to,
May I ask a question?
oh, of course, yeah, is it not popping up?
I guess so.
Yeah, it must not be working. Okay.
I went and visited this tree as I did all the others, and my first reaction to it wasn't super positive, but I'm not familiar with this species. I kind of went, kind of the declining nature of it resonated a little bit, but again, I'm not familiar with this species. So can you comment or elaborate a little bit further on the advisory committees or your personal, professional, do we see any reason that this tree is declining, like those lower branches that don't have a lot of foliage? Is that natural for this species, where the upper canopy is just doing all the work and the lower ones just don't need to? Is there anything further you'd like to share about the health of the tree?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Nielsen, with the pruning that the tree receives on the utility side and the species-specific knowledge about Monterey pine in Southern California, which it doesn't do well, and when it doesn't do well, it goes up fast. So if it has green pine needle and people know the species, you're seeing a healthy tree. Yes, branches die off, portions of the tree might not look great, but that species that tree is doing, has general good health, is what I think the committee would have said and did say.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we have anybody online that wishes to speak to this?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. With that, I think it is time for either discussion or a motion. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee decision to deny the removal of the Monterey pine at 92 Skyline Circle.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Nielsen, we have a motion.
I will second that motion.
Okay, and Commissioner Price, that's what you were about to do. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second, so unless there's any further discussion, I will go to a vote. All righty. All right, and the motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that, let them get out of there, great. And then that takes us to, I believe we are at the director's report.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I'll be rather brief. You have 2 guest speakers and 2 more items on your agenda for this meeting, and they have been waiting patiently.
Very patiently, thank you.
So very quickly, it is spring break, as I mentioned, so we are offering spring break camps, and I don't have the sign-up numbers right this moment, but it's been a long time since we've been successfully able to sign up for spring break camps. In part, last year, remember, it rained for quite a bit of spring break, and it really was not a great time for kids to be outside. And then those of us that spend any time in Shoreline Park saw the loss of both fencing and sidewalk that we sustained during February 2024. Believe it or not, nothing happens overnight to make these repairs. We actually had to go through the planning process and go through building, to redo the sidewalk and the fencing, but it is now complete. So in addition to replacing the sidewalk, replacing fencing where necessary, we also created an accessible picnic area at the upper area of the park. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do. I will let you know that if you're wondering why the accessible picnic table looks very different, it's a temporary solution. We will have something that looks more appropriate for the park very soon. And then some time ago, we took the commission on a tour of Alice Keck Park Memorial Garden when we were applying for community development block grants to make some safety improvements and access improvements there. Construction is underway. We anticipate it will continue through May, and staff working with the contractor are doing our best to ensure that access to and use of most of the park can continue while construction is underway. So there'll be certain sections of the park that are closed off while they're doing their work. At some point, we can do walkthrough and see what's happened and talk about what we'd like to do there next. And then lastly, it was Arbor Week at the beginning of March. And this is something that we celebrate every week. We do it in conjunction with Santa Barbara Beautiful. We spend quite a bit of time planting trees around elementary schools and with elementary children. And so it's one of those fun, good, feel-good events that involves forestry staff, members of the community, and also Santa Barbara Beautiful. And Santa Barbara Beautiful provides funding for the purchase of trees that we plant in our city streets every year. And that concludes my very rapid director's report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. It was brief but meaty, as always. All right, and that takes us to, there's no old business, new business. We, next is a information presentation on the beach grooming program. Hello.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, Steve Biddle, who's one of our park supervisors, has been with the department for 13 years, has overseen our beach grooming program for that entire time. He's also been very much involved in a beach ecology coalition, and this presentation, a portion of it or elements of this presentation were provided during a beach ecology meeting a few weeks ago, perhaps it was last month, and we thought it'd be a great opportunity to educate the commission on what we do in our areas that we do beach grooming. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Biddle. Welcome.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, it's my privilege to be here and give you an overview of our beach program, beach maintenance program, which I've been involved in, like Jill said, for now 13 years. I think it's a program that I take a lot of pride in carrying out to a high degree, given the amount of time we spend on there and the operators that we have carrying out that program. So, here we are with our beach grooming program. In Santa Barbara, we have approximately 2.9 miles of groomed beaches. So those are East Beach, West Beach, and Ledbetter Beach. More specifically, the areas that we groom on East Beach would be from about East Beach Pavilion down to the far end of Chase Palm Park, where the multi-purpose area is, and multi-use areas where some people play soccer, frisbee, and other things. The green areas that you'll note on the map indicate areas that we do not groom, and those are for sensitive areas for biological and wildlife reasons. So we stay 250 feet away from those buffer zones, the bodies of water specifically, which are lagoons and creek outfalls. So that's how we take care of the habitat and species of concern. West Beach and Ledbetter Beach do not have restricted areas other than some of the physical challenges, specifically to Ledbetter Beach in the rock and the sand that goes in and out. Our grooming schedule varies seasonally, so May through September we consider that peak season. I guess it could be considered peak season for tourists as well and visitors. We groom twice a month, and 2 cycles per month means that we spend 1 to 2 days on East Beach, 1 day on West Beach, and 1 to 2 days on Ledbetter, varying on the needs. Each cycle consists of, during that peak season, 320 man-hours when, for the operator. In the off-season, we only groom once a month, which is October through April. And again, that adds up to about 224 hours. So, and those are only grooming hourly totals. Those do not address any outside events such as natural disasters or floods or fires. So that's just our standard grooming. The equipment that you see there is an agricultural tractor, and it is towing what we call our surf rake. So the surf rake is a very nimble and small piece of equipment. When I first came here to Santa Barbara, we had what was called a Beach King, and it was very, very large and noisy and somewhat dusty. So I think what we're doing now does a better job and has a smaller footprint. The purpose of our grooming is for the following reason. So we are promoting and taking care of environmental health, addressing public safety. It's also nice to have good-looking beaches where we have people visiting, and we're enhancing recreation. So nobody wants to see a pile of debris like you see in that picture, and those are actual things that we pick up with our surf rake. So we can pick up to a rock about this size down to a cigarette butt. So there are 1,000 stainless steel fingers on that surf rake, and they do a good job picking things up. When we groom, it can vary seasonally how much we pick up. Typically, the most are following heavy rainfall and the rivers discharging debris and trash. So environmental management is, our beach maintenance is regulated by the city's sediment management plan. That is set up through the Waterfront Department and the Army Corps of Engineers. We, as we do every grooming cycle, do a bird survey by professional trained and certified wildlife monitors. It's every single time we go out. And we only groom dry sand areas above the mean high tide line. And the reason we do that is to leave the rack line, which is a food source and sand nourishment, as well as that is where the zone between the low tide and high tide where a California grunion would go to spawn and lay eggs. So as I said in that plan, so we are driven to take note and address species of concern. And when those wildlife monitors go out, they're assisting us with knowledge and information that's invaluable. So the species of concern that we deal with in our beaches and beach areas are the western snowy plover, who you see in the picture there, California least tern, and California grunion, and then the tidewater goby. So all of those have been noted in the area in the past and current, and are what we're looking for. So I said the primary species of concern that we deal with is western snowy plover. It was predominantly seen on East Beach, around the dune areas is where we see it. These are overwintering populations. They are not nesting populations. Western snowy plover is very easily disturbed. They will fly away if totally threatened, but their defense mechanism is to hunker down and to hide. They are listed as a threatened species by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and in California, we consider them a species of special concern. So to give you an idea how difficult it is, and I won't grade anyone on this one, there are plovers in there, and if anybody has a wild guess, that you go ahead and, Anybody say greater than 5? In both pictures? In both. I'll give you a hint, there's the same amount in both, the different environments. So I'll give you the answer on this test. So it's 9. So they are really good. Some of them where you can't see them, that's their backs, and so they camouflage in really well. It's a wonderful mechanism in most cases, but they'll also stay there, and people can walk on them. They might get out of the way. It probably wouldn't be the worst case. But they also, in our beach environments, we have mechanized machinery that go out there. So that's one of the reasons why we go out there and we want to know where they are. And if noted, we do not go there with our machinery. Okay, I also mentioned the California least tern. So this is a beach nesting shorebird. Predominantly they're around river mouths, harbors, and estuaries. We do not currently have any that we've noted since before 2006 was the last ones that were close. In our direct beaches, we don't have any records that I can find. They were, at that point, they were nesting up near Goleta at Coelho Point. We hope someday that we might have some come back. They do have them in Ventura Harbor, but we continue to look for them with our monitors and our staff. Okay, and last but not least is our Tidewater goby, who is there looking at us in the picture directly. They are doing quite well, actually, in recovering in Mission Lagoon and also in the bird refuge as well. And there have been some noted also in the bird refuge outfall. So that's encouraging, although other than we stay away from their areas, like I mentioned, with our machinery, we don't directly interact with them. So our interaction would be to just stay away. And then last but not least is the California grunion. So the picture of those grunion are Rincon Beach. I don't have any pictures in Santa Barbara because we don't know how many there are. We know that we're in their run where they are. There are people through the Beach Ecology Coalition called grunion greeters. So if anyone wants to volunteer and go out during the full moon in the middle of the night, that's when they go looking for grunion. But typically we know we're in the zone where they can and could be. They have been seen here before. It's been a while, and they're seeing them move further north as climate adjustments have been made. So we'll look for them. And they also guide some of the areas where we do groom and don't groom. All right, so that moves us on to recreation. We have a lot of that on our beaches in Santa Barbara. They're very busy and well used. So one of the reasons, like I said, we're taking care of the beaches is for that purpose. There's a lot of passive use. You can see it in the picture there with towels, umbrellas, and beach chairs. We have an active beach volleyball community in Santa Barbara. There are many other sports that get played on our beaches. We have swimming communities, both open water through duathlons and triathlons, and people who just want to go out there and swim laps up and down Ledbetter and East Beach. We do a lot of beach weddings, especially since the pandemic. I mean, and that's something that the city handles. We have watercraft, both paddle boarders, surfers, and other various activities that go off of our beaches. There is surf fishing and fishing off in many areas near the beach. We do a very active Independence Day celebration, and there are other special events that are handled through the Recreation Department on our beaches. So it's a pretty busy environment. So hence, how do we meet those needs in that busy environment? So we do trash cleanups, both with staff on the beach groomer, staff by hand, and volunteer groups that come out and assist us. We do safety inspections with staff before and while we're on the beach with our grooming We we follow laws and ordinances to protect our natural resources. We use signage and education as well to meet the needs of where people can go and appropriate uses on those beaches. We define areas, like I said, to stay out of, and that's both for staff and for users on certain events. And assisting that is scheduling of events so that we don't have too many organized users in the same area competing for a limited space. There is habitat restoration that's going on currently on East Beach in the dune restoration, and a rather extensive renovation where the bird refuge outfall happened. And both of them, I can report, are doing quite well. And then agency staff. So we have some really talented equipment operators that work under me. I'm proud of how they take pride in their craft. It is not a textbook area to operate machinery. It changes all the time. There are varying needs. We deal with public on the beach most of the time while we're doing this, and the techniques that they have learned and applied over the year make their job very successful, and I think we've carried that out. All right, so lastly, I'd just like to kind of go through a why and how. So we are dealing with health and safety issues. It's extremely important when we're dealing with not just people, but also wildlife to make sure that the health of those beach environments is at their best. So we take trash and debris off of the beaches. When user experience is involved, we want to do everything we can to enhance that. So we keep the beaches clean, attractive, and most importantly, safe. So we get public feedback. We do inspections to follow up from feedback. We have user groups that also give us input, and then businesses and residents in our active city give us input that we follow up on. So event preparation and cleanup. So one of the conditions that larger events have to plan and meet and mitigate their impact on the beaches is important. I can also say one of our biggest events, which is the 4th of July celebration, the city goes through extensive preparation and planning and care to make it as safe and smooth as possible. And I think since I've been here, we've been able to complete our cleanup by somewhere around early afternoon at the latest on the following day. And you would never know that it took place. Also in Santa Barbara, we have a long history of wildlife protection and care. We carry that on the beach with wildlife monitors. We have staff who we educate and train, and then also we do follow-up and public education through agencies like or organizations like the Beach Ecology Coalition, and collaboration with some of our scientists and education resources. So, and last but not least, in Santa Barbara, we know how important ecological response is. So we do our best within the Parks Division to mitigate impacts from natural and human disasters. And we do that through collaboration between educators, with city agencies, county agencies, state and federal agencies. So there's a lot of cooperation that goes along and interaction. It goes way back even before the 1968 oil spills, which really started out ecological responses. But we've dealt, since I've been here, with tsunamis in Japan and debris that came all the way over. We've dealt with fires and floods that have inundated our beaches. And I think that we sensitively, but in rapid fire, respond in a pretty appropriate way to each of those instances. All right, so Last but not least, I'd just like to show you a couple slides from past 4th of July events. These are from the 1970s on the left and 1980s on the right. I think that perhaps we've learned some things since then about how to care for our natural resources on the beach, and probably reduce the impacts that are going on. So we do, most of our people that visited the beach on the 4th of July are on grassy areas, but the areas on the sand, we try and guide them with informational signs, and hopefully that has some impact. And then we have learned from that and try and plan and not allow some of the activities that were permitted during those times and carried out. So I think today is much different than some of the pictures that we see there. All right, and let's see. Do you have any questions from the commission?
All right, I see. Thank you very much, by the way. I start with Commissioner Nielsen and then Commissioner Price.
Thank you for that lovely report. I've actually been wondering about beach grooming for a long time as I've been spending time down in that area. Just out of curiosity, how many loads do you have to do of your surf rake to groom the 2.9 miles once? Are you emptying that thing every 30 minutes or hour? Does it fill up quickly? How does that, just the logistics of that work? Where does it go? Do we sort through it? Do we count it in any way? Do we feed that information into other programs? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair McGill and commissioners. It varies beach to beach. Like I say, in the summer, we're picking up less debris. The debris hopper on the surf rake holds 3.5 cubic yards of material. That's kind of an ambiguous figure to note. Our dump truck, which we bring down with us during those grooming cycles, we fill up typically 3 to 5 times on a grooming site. So I can tell you the yearly totals vary between 250 cubic yards and 550 cubic yards. So it's a huge variation, but that figure also includes some of the natural disasters.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rams, oh no, I'm sorry. Oh, well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just as a quick aside, I really appreciate the beaches. They're part of the reason I moved here from Houston. And when I have friends and family come in from Houston, we always spend a day at the beach in East Beach. So thank you very much for the work you do there. You mentioned the dune restoration. Where is that taking place? And could you talk a little bit about what that work is?
Commissioner McGill and Commissioner Price, excuse me, Chair McGill and Commissioner Price. So the dune restoration project is through the Department of Public Works, and that is behind the beach house at Chase Palm Park, and then along until it makes that kind of S turn where it goes towards the pavilion. So that's their project, and is about in the middle of its cycle. I can't tell you a whole lot more than that, other than we did look at it from the outside at our last Beach Ecology Coalition, and people were pretty impressed.
Thank you very much.
And
Chair
Commissioner
McGill,
Ramsey.
Commissioner Price, the project is mitigation for the desal intake pipe. So I mentioned the fact that we have a sediment management plan. It's actually, it's through the California Coastal Commission, so it's a permit. And so every 10 years, we have to re-permit the various activities that occur in the Santa Barbara's waterfront, small w, which also includes the dredging that happens in the harbor twice a year. So if you've watched that, and it includes our work effort, it includes a variety of things. When there is any change or infrastructure change that involves, for example, our water and our wastewater come from the ocean or go to the ocean, it requires permitting by the Coastal Commission. And increasingly, they are requiring mitigation that allows for restoration of dunes, even though technically dunes never existed here, because it's really a constructed environment. It's a very much engineered environment. The project that's down by the bird refuge was done by the Creeks Division, so that was a voluntary project, both of areas of the bird refuge, but also areas around the outfall, as a way to create a more natural environment in lower recreational used areas. I anticipate that over time, particularly as we tackle sea level rise and the increasing impacts from storm events, dune restoration will be a strategy that we continue to use along the length of Santa Barbara's waterfront. When you get to the coastal bluff areas, there's really nothing you can do. We will lose beach and it will be gone, but in these other areas, there may be ways we can mitigate the loss as well as protect, inland areas by the use of dunes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, thank you, Director Zachary. That just cleared up a lot of my questions. And thank you, Mr. Fiddle, for everything. Like everyone here, the beach is one of the most treasured parts of all of Santa Barbara. People come here for the beach and stay for everything else. My question is, because this is such an important part, do you have everything you need to accomplish the task being done? Is there any other resources that would benefit the city?
Commissioner McGill and excuse me, Chair McGill and Commissioner Ramsey. You can always use more equipment. I think we have enough to get by. There's times when the scale, I think, of some of the impacts that we're dealing with have seemed to really increase in the last decade. Getting tractors and loaders appropriate for that size response might be something down the road that can assist with some of the floods and slides and restoration work that goes on. That said, we're able to make ends meet with what we have. It just takes longer to get that done. It would also be nice if we were able to increase some of the education, I think, of both public and staff to some degree, and why, especially with the public, why we do and don't do things. I think a great many of people in the city of Santa Barbara aren't aware that dogs aren't allowed on the 3 developed beaches that we deal with, and that is a very negative impact on especially our bird life, but wildlife, and has certainly public health concerns.
Thank you so much for your time and effort. And dogs do have a reign over the city, apparently. So thank you.
Yeah, don't get me started on dogs on the beaches. Thank you. Just the passion and commitment that you and your team bring to this work are evident every time anybody takes step on a beach. Commissioner Price and I both have lived in a place where you drive on the beach, and the same place where you drive on the beach, and I can assure you this is a much better way to live. So thank you. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. All right. And this, thank you for hanging in there. Brings us to the last thing on our agenda, which is the open space element update.
So Chair McGill and Commissioner Rosie Dicey from the Community Development Department is going to be doing this presentation. This is not your only crack at talking about the open space element. This is an introduction that she will give, and it's a work effort that was initiated. It's an opportunity to sort of introduce this work effort, and then we will be integrating the commission as we move forward.
Thank you and welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So Chair McGill and members of the commission, I'm Rosie Deisty. I'm a project planner in community development, and I'm in the long-range planning division, and I'm project manager of the open space element update. So today I'm going to take you through a little bit of context on what is a general plan and why we're doing this update. Talk about what is open space per state law, and also what the city considers open space. And then give you a little overview of the project scope and our next steps. So the general plan is a comprehensive framework of our city's roughly 20 years goals and our strategies on how to achieve them. Some of you may have heard of the Plan Santa Barbara General Plan Update. That actually happened before I joined the city. But it was a big effort to update most of the general plan. So in 2011, it ended up being completely reorganized. The entire land use element was updated, and then all the other elements had new goals, policies, and actions added. I'll talk you through the general plan and all the elements a little bit more. So I already mentioned the 2011 land use element update was comprehensively updated. And starting at the top, surrounding this is all the other elements, some of which are required by the state and some of which we do voluntarily. So starting at the top, the circulation element is a state requirement that was last updated in 1997. And then we have a voluntary scenic highways element, but it's from the 70s as well. Safety element was updated in 2013. This element is actually also going to be updated. It's assigned to me as well, so I'm kind of doing both at the same time, but the open space element has got a deadline. I'll talk about that in a minute, so we're doing that one first. And the safety element usually has to be updated after you update your housing element, which was the next one on the list. 2023 to 2031 is our housing element. I was the project manager for that one too, and that has to be updated every 8 years per state law. And that's required by the state. On the bottom are two voluntary elements, historic resources and economy and fiscal health. Those were part of the Plan Santa Barbara update. Finally, we get to open space, which is from the 1970s, and then in the early 80s, parks and recreation element was added to the open space element, and that essentially is portions of the park and recreation master plan that were incorporated in. Then we have a environmental resources element from 2011, and the conservation and noise element are required by the state, but those are all both from the late 1970s. So we kind of slowly update these elements as we go along and have staff and resources to do them, or we're required by state law to update them. A little bit more about the open space element, though. Again, it's one of the required general plan elements. Initially adopted in 1972 as an open space element, and then again, I mentioned it was amended and added portions of Park and Recreation Master Plan. In 2011, as part of that Plan Santa Barbara update, there was a very minor update that was a new goal, 2 new policies, and 12 implementation actions. But overall, it's not a big document. It's about 20 pages right now, and it's, again, part of the general plan. So why we're updating it now is that there was a Senate bill passed that was effective, I believe, in 2023 and requires an update to the open space element by the end of this year. And specifically what they put in the legislation is that we need to address access to open space areas that considers social, economic, and racial equity, climate resilience and other co-benefits of open space, and then what they call rewilding, which I'm still waiting for a little more guidance on that from the state, but they talk about that as being opportunities to preserve, enhance, and expand a network of open space to support beneficial uses. The open space element also requires an inventory of specified categories of open space resources, so I'll go over those. They came from the state, and the state sort of goes on to say that open space is essentially unimproved but not completely vacant, and then policies and actions for conservation of such areas wherever possible. So the categories by state law of what they want us to inventory are these 6 categories. So it's preservation of natural resources, so that would be open space for plant, fish, and wildlife habitat. You can have open space for managed production of resources, so if you had forest lands or groundwater recharge, commercial fisheries, things like that. Outdoor recreation is a category. Some places may have open space for public health and safety, so you may have areas set aside if it's a fault zone or a floodplain or a high fire hazard area, set it aside as open space. In some areas, there may be open space that supports military installations. And then tribal resources or public lands with Native American resources and sites. So you don't necessarily have all these categories, but they do want us to take what we have and categorize them in one of these buckets. And then we also have what we call open space in the city, which may be a little different from the categories I just talked about. We have a land use designation, which is called parks/open space. And we also have a zone district, which is designated by P/R. So some areas of the city fall into a land use designation. Mostly they match. If you have open space land use designation, you also have a zoning for PR, but it doesn't always match. In general, though, we do know from what we have existing that it's about 15% of our parcels in the city are open space or parks. And it does include the shoreline, all of the city parks, some of our creek areas, some private recreation areas, the Goleta Slough Natural Reserve, and even the Presidio we designated as open space. So we produced this map that was in your packet. It's probably a little hard to read here on the screen, but it's all the areas I just spoke of. And if it's a darker green, it's a city-owned park or open space. And then the lighter green are some of those private areas that we've designated open space. So again, this is just what we've existing, right now, what we call an open space land use designation. It doesn't mean we may not, in the future or as part of this update, we might designate additional areas or take some areas away. We're not sure yet. We're still in the early stages. So the project scope includes an internal team that is providing a lot of input on this. So we have staff from Parks and Recreation, Sustainability and Resilience, and the airport because of the Goleta Slough component. What we're doing right now and started doing is updating that map that I just showed you and an inventory that we have in an Excel spreadsheet. And I've been talking with the team about, you know, are there some areas we should be adding to the open space inventory and that sort of thing. I've been researching what other cities are doing and also coordinating with our neighboring cities and county because that state legislation applies to all cities and counties. So Goleta, Carpinteria, and the county are all doing an open space element update. And also open spaces cross boundaries, especially if it's a hiking trail or something like that. We've been doing or starting public outreach and input. So I have a web page that falls under the city's general plan web page that talks about this open space element update, and we want to get public input as we move along. We'll be drafting new goals, policies, and implementation, and then bringing it all together for public review and also decision maker review, and we would love to come back to your commission for review and then move on to adoption. The timeline is as follows. So we initiated this project in the fall. So when you are updating the city's general plan, it actually has to be a formal initiation by resolution with city council. And we are also required to do tribal consultations. So we started that process in the fall. We've also been doing some research in the data collection in that new map you just saw. We've started a little bit of outreach, and we'll be doing more of that as we go along from now till throughout the whole process, actually. I'm hoping by, say, late summer, we might have a draft document ready for review. And then we would move along for public and decision maker review and then adoption hearings. So the goal is to finish it by the end of the year. Like the state legislation directed the update to be done by January 1st, 2026. There's no punishment if you don't get it done in time. So like I said, the goal is to get it done by the end of the year, but it may slip a little bit. I'm juggling lots of other projects, so we'll see how that goes. So the next steps, just in the immediate future, is sort of, as I'm working with that internal team, we're looking at the inventory and doing any adjustments to the map that we need to do. I've started drafting new goals. I like to start with the goals first, and then your policies and implementation can kind of follow that. So I'm hoping to draft maybe 4 or 5 new goals. That may be something we could even bring back to your commission for review as a sort of a check-in point, if you so desire. And then we are planning to go to the Earth Day event at the end of April and be part of a booth that the city has lots of city staff at. And we would have a large version of the map and probably some questions to ask the public. You know, how do you access open space areas? What do you like about the open space areas? What additional areas would you like to see as open space? That sort of thing. And that concludes my presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And I'm speaking for myself, at least, I think it would be a really good check-in point when you're really starting to think through the goals.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, Commissioner Nielsen.
I'm going to maybe throw out a couple, if that's okay, not impolite to do. Is there a minimum size to be considered open space?
Sorry. Chair McGill and Commissioner Nelson. No, there is no minimum size.
Wonderful. Is there any goals, past goals, that you could share as an example, or current goals you're drafting that you are things that might be considered?
I can share with you, I don't have current goals yet, but I did bring the open space element, and I can read to you the most recent goal that was done in 2011, because I think it's a good one to, I think it's a good goal, and we probably will keep it. It basically says, protect and enhance the city's livability, accessibility, and character in the community's health through the generous provision of a variety of accessible public open space opportunities. So that's an example of a goal. I've been working with different themes to think about what other goals we might want to have. Another example could be you could have a goal to direct resources and funds to improve and maybe gain more open space. You could have a goal that would be to improve access to open space areas through a variety of means, things like that.
Wonderful, thank you. I got a couple more, but I'll share the floor for you guys.
We'll go with Commissioner Ramsey and then back to Commissioner Nelson.
Great, thank you. Thank you for putting this together, Rosie. Excited to see what comes of it. When we do set the goals, we would like just to see measurable KPIs of where we are and what we expect in the future, just so we have some tangible goals to look forward to. And that's really all I wanted to comment on.
Okay. Chair McGill and Commissioner Ramsey, thank you for that. And yeah, I think I appreciate that you want to be involved in the goal setting, so I would look forward to coming back when we have some drafted with our internal team, and then we can share them with you.
And Commissioner Nielsen, back to you.
You talked about opportunities to add to our open space. How do those come up? You know, we've talked about in past meetings where, you know, a private parcel might be donated through a trust or things of that nature. Is it similar for the open space element?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Nelson, I think that's your name. I can't really see it behind the screen. But, well, one of the things we're thinking about is when I say add open space, I meant we have that inventory I've mentioned, and it's sort of a parcel-based inventory. And I've noticed, for example, there's areas of the city that where land has been set aside due to permit conditions and it cannot be developed. Some of it is actually publicly accessible, like near the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History. But we haven't really called that open space. So I think we have some opportunities to sort of call certain areas open space and map them as such that we haven't done now. As far as new areas for open space, that would be something that would take, you know, funding and resources and maybe identifying vacant land that could be something the city could look into pursuing in the future.
Thanks. And in that same neighborhood, Mission Creek, is that ever come up in the rewilding category, as Los Angeles and other communities have talked about taking their concrete, waterways and trying to make it a more natural, accessible open space?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Nelson. I haven't heard anything like that for Mission Creek myself, but I do have a staff member from the Creeks Division who's on the internal team. So we've talked a little bit about the city. In the old open space element, they say creeks are open space, but a lot of them are privately owned. So it's a little difficult to designate them as open space when they're privately owned. But they did, for example, designate all the flood control channels as open space currently. So there's maybe portions of creeks that are publicly owned that we could officially designate as open space and then look for opportunities for restoration.
Yeah, thank you. And your
Chair McGill, I'm sorry,
Right.
I'll wait for it. Just to add a few things, since for the last 20 years, we have actually added parkland as open space in the city. The Arroyo open space, which was added, which is at the end of Allen Road. The city also acquired a 6-acre parcel, which is along, and a 4-acre parcel on Las Positas. Recently, you have a parcel at the end of Palermo in Hidden Valley. Different ways in which land may come to the city, and ultimately it can vary. Ideally, it's gifted. In fact, I should do for you a little presentation on the history of Santa Barbara's parks and why we have the resources that we do have, and it's largely through the generous donations and philanthropy of people 100 years ago. We would not have the waterfront that we have today without the leadership of the community, basically at the turn of the century. And then to the extent that we can acquire open space, it often happens through fundraising, like the Douglas Family Preserve, the Arroyo Open Space. Trust for Public Land was engaged in both of those. Most of the creek areas that are publicly owned are in city parks, so most of the creek restoration that does occurs in city park spaces. There are some interesting open spaces that are essentially undevelopable because of where they are. I don't know that, I guess through the process it'll be determined if it's okay to call them open space, because there is a land development component that probably needs to be considered. And I think maybe, Ms. Dicey, can you speak to the view shed concept of open space? Because I think what she's presenting to you is really focused on parks, but it's more than that. I think Highway 101 was considered open space. So if you think of like where there isn't development, where you can see the mountains, where you can see the ocean, where you can see different open space, even if you're not in it, it actually creates that feeling of openness in the community.
Yeah, I can elaborate a little bit on that, Chair McGill and Commissioners. As Director Zachary mentioned, for example, in the coastal land use plan, which is sort of a separate but equal component to our inland land use plan, they designated Highway 101 as open space. It doesn't show up on the map because it's not exactly a parcel. There's also some railroad right-of-way that's been designated open space. But I noticed, for example, that some of your facilities, the 1,000 Steps and Mesa Lane Steps, they don't really show up on this map as open space because they're not a parcel exactly. But I think we want to include areas like that in the inventory. I've even been thinking about all the stairways on the Riviera that go from one place to another. So there's easements and things like that that I think we should be calling open space, even if they're not necessarily a parcel that we can show on the map in that way.
All right, thank you. Good, okay. Commissioner Price.
Thank you very much. I found it both informative and humorous that the Montecito Country Club is not actually in Montecito, but that's a different conversation. I did want to ask, as a follow-up to Commissioner Ramsey's question, how are we measuring the progress of the various goals? Do you have any thoughts on that, or how have we done it previously?
So Chair McGill and Commissioner Price, are you referring to progress on past goals for example, or?
I think that would be a good barometer. I'm interested, as you mentioned, in KPIs. How well are we tracking to the goal we set out to accomplish?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that right now because we're so much in the early stages, but that's a great question, and I think it would be a good one to reflect back and see how well did we do, and then what do we want to carry forward? What have we not done yet that is already in our plans? So I like that comment, and I'll think about that and come back to you.
Thank you very much.
And Commissioner Nielsen, back to you.
Does accessibility to these open spaces and maybe in the context of equity touch other commissions and departments, transportation, and talk about things like bike lanes and handicap parking and just how people get to and from, and is that incorporated?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioner Nelson, that's also a great comment. What we want to do with this map is add the city's bike lanes and things like that to show how these areas are accessed. And there will be a discussion in the new document about all those things you just mentioned. You know, what's the parking situation, how you can get there using means other than a car, or their, like you said, handicap needs, those sort of things. So we do have that equitable aspect of access to these areas. Another thing I failed to mention, but I think is worth mentioning, is there's open space areas outside the city boundary that the city owns that are not shown on this map, but I probably will do another map that shows those. So Rattlesnake Canyon and Cold Springs Canyon, we own a lot of parcels up there, and they are designated open space as well. They're just not within the city boundaries.
We also have Gould Park. And then there are county parks within the city boundaries, and then county parks just outside city boundaries. Some of the questions that you're asking, I think, will be further addressed in the update to our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And so that is an initiative that the department will be beginning actually next month. I actually recently recruited a project planner to be the project manager for that effort. It will be different from this, but they will be companion and relatable, and ultimately that's where we would have potentially very specific metrics in terms of what we want to achieve in providing facilities, services, parks, who we're reaching, how we're reaching them, and how we're reinvesting and or in acquiring new parkland.
All right. I think with that, thank you. This will be fascinating
Thank
to
you.
watch the progress of this.
Thank you.
It's a lot more encompassing than I thought just by reading the document and looking at the map. So, thank you very much. And with that, I believe that takes us to the end. So next month is our budget meeting, right? So next month is a big meeting. And so until then, have a good month.